The broken arrowhead should not have bothered Mara Ellery as much as the two faint blue lines in the healer's moonwater bowl. One meant she was carrying Gavin Rourke's child. The other meant someone had lied about the attack on Frost Hollow's northern caravan. Mara sat very still on the edge of the midwife's narrow cot, one hand pressed against her stomach, while snow hissed against the shutters. Old Maeve stood across from her, sleeves rolled to her elbows, studying the milky water with the solemn concentration of a priestess. "There's no mistake," the midwife said at last. 4 weeks, perhaps 5. For one suspended heartbeat, Mara forgot the arrowhead in her pocket, the missing iron shipments, the whispers of war. She forgot everything except the impossible warmth blooming beneath her ribs. A child, Gavin's child. A laugh escaped her before she could stop it, half joy and half disbelief. 6 months of stolen meetings beyond the eastern watchtower, 6 months of promises made where no council elder could hear them, and tonight Gavin had sworn there would be no more hiding. At the winter solstice feast, he would name her before the entire pack, his mate, his future Luna. Mara looked down at her still flat stomach and whispered, "You chose your timing well." Maeve's expression softened, but only briefly. "Tell him before the feast begins." "I will." "And Mara?" She looked up. "Make sure he hears you." The warning chilled her more than the wind outside. Mara pulled on her wool cloak and stepped into the snow. Frost Hollow's stone lanes climbed toward Rourke, keep beneath strings of torchlight, every house burning brighter than usual for the solstice. Music drifted down from the stronghold. Roasted meat, pine smoke, hot cider. The entire pack seemed determined to celebrate, despite the shortages that had haunted the valley for months. 3 iron caravans lost, 2 border patrols attacked, weapons being repaired instead of replaced, and House Vane offering salvation. Mara slipped a hand into her pocket and touched the broken arrowhead again. Her father had taught her never to ignore a mark that did not belong. She had found the piece that afternoon near the wagon yard, mixed among debris recovered from the latest northern attack. Frost Hollow smiths stamped every arrowhead near the base. Vein iron carried a narrow double notch. This one had neither. Instead, someone had filed away a mark. Deliberately. Mara had spent years following her father through snow and mud, learning that people lied far more easily than tracks did. She could not yet prove what the arrowhead meant, but she knew one thing. Something about the attacks was wrong. Tonight, she intended to tell Gavin both pieces of news. One would change their lives. The other might save his pack. The great hall was already overflowing when she arrived. Warriors filled the benches beneath evergreen garlands and black and silver banners. Mead splashed across tables. Musicians played beside the hearth. At the far end of the hall, the Rourke family sat beneath the carved stone wolf that had watched Frost Hollow's alphas rule for generations. Mara searched for Gavin, found him, and stopped breathing. He wore ceremonial black, silver, clasped across his broad shoulders. He looked every inch the man who would inherit Frost Hollow before spring. But a woman sat beside him, Lenora Vane. She was impossible to mistake. Golden brown hair arranged beneath a jeweled net, winter white silk falling from her shoulders, her posture as controlled as if the entire hall belonged to her. Around her throat hung a silver chain bearing the wolf head crest of Frost Hollow, not jewelry, a mating chain. Mara felt the first crack inside her before Gavin even stood. His eyes found hers across the hall. For a second, the noise disappeared. His face changed. Not surprise, guilt. That hurt worse. Gavin rose and lifted his cup. "My people." The musicians stopped. Conversation died around him. "We have endured a hard winter before winter has truly begun. Our caravans have been attacked. Our iron stores are nearly exhausted. Every alpha in the north knows weakness, invites teeth." Mara moved forward through the crowd. Gavin saw her coming. He kept speaking. House Vane has agreed to reopen its mines to Frost Hollow, supply our warriors through spring, and stand beside us if the border packs move against our territory. Victor Vane, seated beside his daughter, smiled without warmth. Gavin's hand tightened around the cup. In return, Frost Hollow and House Vane will be joined. Mara stopped in the center aisle. No, it was not loud. It did not need to be. Dozens of heads turned toward her. Gavin closed his eyes for the briefest instant. Then he said the words anyway. Lenora Vane will become my Luna. The hall erupted. Mara barely heard it. She walked toward the high table, as if the floor had narrowed into a single path beneath her feet. Gavin. A guard stepped in front of her. Gavin raised one hand. Let her through. The cheering faded into uncomfortable silence. Mara reached the dais. Up close, she could smell cedar on Gavin's clothes, the same scent that had clung to him the night he promised they would stop hiding. You told me tonight was ours. Mara, you said you would name me. His jaw flexed. Victor Vane watched them with mild interest. Lenora watched with considerably more. Gavin descended one step. This isn't the place. You made it the place when you announced another woman as your Luna. Mara, there are two things you need to hear before you do this. His eyes sharpened. She reached into a pocket. The caravan attack. Not now. You need to see what I found. I said not now. There's something wrong with the northern attacks, Gavin. The arrowheads don't match the reports. Give me 3 days. Let me trace the route with the old maps. My father taught me those roads better than anyone alive. A murmur passed through the hall. Gavin's face hardened. I don't have 3 days. You don't know that. I have 300 warriors whose weapons are failing. And if House Vane is not what you think? Victor Vane's chair scraped softly behind him. That was when Gavin's expression changed. Not because he thought she was wrong. Because she had embarrassed him. Mara. Enough. She stared at the man she had loved, since before either of them understood what a mate bond was. Then she placed both hands over her stomach. There's something else. Gavin went still. I saw Maeve tonight. The silence became absolute. Mara forced the words through a throat that suddenly felt too tight to use. I'm carrying your child. Gavin's face emptied. Behind him, Lenora's composure finally cracked. What? Mara never looked away from Gavin. For one hopeful, humiliating second, she saw the man from the eastern watchtower return. He came down another step. Mara. His eyes fell to her stomach. His hand lifted as though he might touch her. Then Victor Vane spoke. Gavin. Only his name. Nothing more. Gavin looked toward the council table. Toward the warriors. Toward Lenora. Toward the men who had spent months telling him Frost Hollow would not survive without Vane iron. And Mara understood before he spoke. He was going to do it anyway. A child, Gavin said quietly, does not arm 300 warriors. Something inside her went cold. Neither does betrayal. His eyes flashed. You think this is about what I want? I think you decided I was the cheapest thing you could sacrifice. I am trying to keep this pack alive. Then save your pack. But don't call betrayal duty. A few wolves lowered their eyes. Gavin heard them. His shame turned to anger. The Alpha Command entered his voice. Mara Ellery, stand down. Pain rolled through the mate bond. She remained upright. No. Gavin stared at her. Then, with the whole pack watching, he chose. I, Gavin Rourke, heir of Frost Hollow, reject you, Mara Ellery, as my mate. The bond tore. Mara screamed. White agony ripped through her chest so violently that her knees struck stone before she knew she had fallen. Her wolf howled somewhere inside her, frantic and wounded, clawing after something that was already gone. Mara curled around her stomach. The baby. Protect the baby. Someone approached. She expected Gavin. It was Lenora. This disruption threatens the alliance, she said. If Frost Hollow permits it to continue, my father will reconsider his offer. Mara looked up through tears. Gavin was staring at her. He could still stop. Instead, he turned toward his council. Remove her rank. Several elders shifted uneasily. Gavin forced the next words out. And exile her from Frost Hollow. A horrified whisper moved through the hall. Mara stopped crying. Gavin looked directly at her now, as if coldness could make what he was doing necessary. If you remain inside our borders after sunrise, you will be considered rogue. Rogue. The word meant any patrol could kill her. Guards seized her arms. As they dragged her toward the doors, the broken arrowhead fell from her pocket and struck the stone floor. Mara twisted toward it. Gavin, look at the mark. He did not. The doors opened. Winter swallowed her. Minutes later, the gates of Frost Hollow slammed shut behind Mara Ellery, leaving her alone beneath a black sky with snow gathering in her hair, and one hand locked protectively over the child Gavin had chosen not to save. She stood there until the cold began creeping through her boots. Then she heard a howl from somewhere beyond the forbidden northern woods. Low, ancien, powerful enough to silence every lesser wolf in the valley. Mara took one unsteady step toward the trees, and for the first time, something moved beneath her hand. The faintest flutter. Her child. Alive. The flutter beneath Mara's palm vanished almost as soon as she felt it. For several seconds, she stood outside the gates of Frost Hollow, staring at the darkness between the pines. Snow settled across her shoulders. Behind the walls, music had begun again. That hurt more than she expected. The pack had watched her lose everything, and the feast had simply continued. Mara turned away. If she remained near the road, a patrol would find her before sunrise. Once Gavin's decree took effect, no warrior would need another reason to put an arrow through her chest. She entered the northern forest. The first mile was the easiest. Anger kept her warm. The second belonged to pain. By the third, Mara understood that the mate bond was not finished hurting her. Each breath pulled against something torn inside her chest. Her wolf had retreated so deeply into her mind that Mara could barely feel her. The absence frightened her more than the cold. A wolf without the presence of her inner beast was not whole. But Mara had another life to protect now. She kept walking. Her father's voice came back to her from Winters, long before Gavin had ever kissed her beneath the eastern tower. Never fight the forest. Use what it gives you. Mara stopped beneath a leaning pine and forced herself to think. The wind was coming from the west. That meant the eastern face of the ridge would offer shelter. Snow gathered deeper between exposed roots, but beneath fallen trees the ground could remain dry enough to preserve body heat. She changed direction. The movement cost her. Her legs trembled. Her fingers had begun to lose sensation. Twice she stumbled, and the second time she remained on her knees long enough to frighten herself. "Get up," she whispered. Nothing moved around her. "Get up." She thought of the tiny flutter outside Frost Hollow. Mara stood. An hour later, the trees opened into a narrow ravine. She found an overturned cedar, with roots rising like a wall from the frozen ground. Beneath them lay a shallow hollow, protected from most of the wind. Not safety, but enough to survive another hour. She crawled inside and tore strips of loose bark from the dead trunk, packing them beneath her cloak and around her boots. Her hands shook so badly, she nearly missed the tracks outside. Mara froze. A wolf had crossed the ravine recently. Large. Too large for a normal pack hunter. She leaned closer. The print was deep, claws exposed. Rogue. Her pulse quickened. Then she noticed something worse. Beside the paw prints ran another set of tracks. Boats. Heavy boots fitted with iron spikes. Mara stared at them. Rogues did not travel beside armed men. They attacked them. Her exhaustion sharpened into unease. She dragged herself from beneath the roots and followed the marks only a few yards. The tracks crossed the ravine together, wolf and man, neither showing any sign of struggle. That was impossible, unless they had been traveling together. Mara crouched lower. One of the boot prints had cut deeply into a patch of exposed mud beneath the snow. The heel carried 3 narrow bars, arranged like a fork. She had seen that pattern before. Vein mine guards. Her heartbeat stumbled. No. The wind moved through the branches. Mara looked back toward the south, though Frost Hollow was already hidden beyond miles of darkness. The broken arrowhead, the filed-away mark, the caravan attacks, the Vein alliance. Something was wrong. She had known it. Gavin had not even looked. A branch cracked somewhere uphill. Mara went still. Another crack. Closer. The scent reached her next. Rotting fur. Old blood. Rogue. She backed toward the overturned cedar. A shadow moved between the trees. The wolf stepped into the ravine. It was enormous. Though starvation had pulled its skin tight across its ribs, patches of fur were missing along one shoulder. One ear had been torn nearly in half, and its yellow eyes held none of the reason that remained in pack wolves. Mara's inner wolf stirred weakly at last. Not enough to shift, not enough to fight, just enough to feel terror. The rogue lowered its head. Mara reached beneath the cedar and closed her hand around a broken branch. One end had split into a jagged point. Pathetic. Still better than nothing. The rogue advanced. Mara rose between it and the shelter behind her, one hand holding the branch, the other guarding her stomach. Come on, then. The wolf's lips peeled back. Mara knew how this ended. She also knew she would not die, curled in the snow. The rogue lunged. Something black struck it from the side. The impact shook snow from the branches. Mara stumbled backward as the 2 bodies rolled across the ravine. The rogue snapped wildly, but the creature that had attacked it was almost twice its size. A direwolf, black from nose to tail, massive shoulders, paws large enough to crush a man's chest. Its eyes burned a deep, unnatural red. The rogue tried to retreat. The black wolf gave it no chance. One violent movement. A crack. Silence. Mara could hear only her own breathing. The direwolf stood over the dead rogue. Then it looked at her. Every instinct Mara possessed screamed at her to lower her eyes. She did not. The animal approached slowly, not like a starving predator, like something that had never needed to hurry. Its dominance pressed through the ravine so heavily that Mara's weakened inner wolf immediately lowered herself in submission. Mara's knees nearly followed. The direwolf stopped several feet away. Its nostrils flared. Mara knew what it smelled. Frost Hollow. Blood. Pregnancy. A violently severed mate bond. The wolf's red eyes narrowed. Then its body shifted. Bones rearranged beneath black fur. Shoulders changed. Spine straightened. Paws becoming hands pressed briefly into the snow. A man rose where the wolf had stood. He was tall enough to make Gavin seem ordinary. Broad through the shoulders, his body marked by old scars that crossed his chest and ribs like records of battles no one had bothered to erase. Dark hair fell loose around, a face too controlled to be called kind. Mara recognized him before she saw the iron crown fastened around his upper arm. Ronan Ashbourne, Alpha King of the Northern Realm, the man Frost Hollow mothers used to frighten disobedient children. The king looked at her torn cloak. Den Herr Bar, Römelhens. Then the bruising beginning to darken around her throat, where the mate bond had broken. His expression changed, almost imperceptibly. Who rejected you? Mara tried to answer. Her teeth were chattering too hard. Ronan stepped closer. She raised the broken branch. His eyes dropped to it. For the first time, something almost human crossed his face. Not amusement. Respect. You can put that down. No. His eyebrows lifted slightly. I wasn't asking because I fear the stick. Good. Her voice barely existed. Then, we understand each other. Ronan crouched. Only then did Mara notice something caught in the dead rogue's fur. a strip of leather. Attached to it was a small iron clasp, 3 narrow bars arranged like a fork. Vane. Her stomach dropped. Mara pointed. That. Ronan followed her gaze. He tore the clasp free and turned it over in his palm. Stamped beneath the dirt was a tiny forge insignia, a crowned V. Mara forced herself to remain conscious. Vain forge. Ronan looked at her. You're certain? My father tracked their caravans for years. Her vision blurred. That shouldn't be on a rogue. The king studied the clasp again. Mara wanted to tell him about the arrowhead, about the boot prints, about Gavin refusing to listen. But the ravine tilted. Ronan moved before she hit the ground. One moment Mara was standing. The next, she was against something impossibly warm. The Alpha King caught her beneath the shoulders, then looked down at her face. Stay awake. I'm trying. Try harder. She would have laughed if she had enough air. Ronan pressed 2 fingers to her throat, then swore quietly. His hand moved toward her stomach but stopped before touching her. Are you carrying? Mara closed her eyes. Yes. His voice changed. How long? 5 weeks. The king looked toward the dead rogue, then toward the boot tracks disappearing into the trees. His jaw tightened. He removed the heavy black cloak from his shoulders and wrapped it around her. Heat closed around Mara. For the first time since Frost Hollow's gates had slammed shut, she felt safe enough to be afraid. Ronan lifted her. Mara's fingers closed weakly around his sleeve. The tracks. I saw them. Someone was with it. I saw that too. Her eyes opened. You believe me? The king looked down at her. I believe tracks. It should have sounded cold. Instead, after Gavin, it felt almost like mercy. Mara's grip loosened. Before darkness took her, she saw Ronan close his fist around the vein clasp. The Alpha King looked toward the southern horizon, toward Frost Hollow, and when he spoke, his voice was very quiet. Someone has been teaching rogues to walk beside men. Mara woke to warmth so complete that, for several confused seconds, she thought she had died. There was no snow beneath her, no wind cutting through wet wool, no pain from frozen ground pressing into her bones. Instead, heavy blankets covered her to the chest, and somewhere close by a fire burned with the deep, steady crackle of well-seasoned oak. Then memory returned. Gavin, the rejection, the forest, the rogue, red eyes. Mara's hand flew to her stomach. Ears. A man rose from a chair beside the hearth before she could force herself upright. He was perhaps 60, silver-haired, dressed in a dark green healer's coat rather than noble clothing. A wooden tray beside him held glass bottles, linen bandages, and a steaming cup that smelled faintly of mint. The child is alive, he said. Mara stopped moving. Her throat tightened. Alive? And stubborn, apparently. The healer approached slowly, leaving enough distance that she did not feel cornered. You were dangerously cold when His Majesty brought you in. Your heartbeat was irregular, and the rejection trauma did more damage than the frost. But you woke. The pregnancy remained stable. Mara closed both hands over her stomach. For the first time since the feast, tears came without humiliation attached to them. She let them. The healer waited. When she finally wiped her face, he handed her the warm cup. Drink. Mara did. The liquid was bitter, but heat spread through her chest. Where am I? Blackspire Citadel. Her fingers tightened around the cup. The Alpha King's fortress. How long? Almost 2 days. 2 days. By Gavin's decree, she had already become a rogue. The thought must have shown on her face. The healer's expression changed. You are not a rogue here. Mara looked at him sharply. Before she could ask what he meant, the bedchamber doors opened. Ronan Ashbourne entered, without ceremony. In daylight, he looked less like the creature from the forest, and more dangerous because of it. He wore black wool beneath a sleeveless leather coat, no crown, no visible weapon. He did not need either. Authority followed him into the room as naturally as cold followed winter. The healer bowed. "Your Majesty, how is she?" "Awake. Stable. The child is well." Ronan's gaze shifted to Mara. "Good." The single word carried something she could not identify. Relief, perhaps. He dismissed the healer with a nod. The door closed. Mara set the cup aside. "You brought me here." "I did." "Why?" Ronan seemed almost surprised by the question. "You were unconscious in my forest. That has not stopped powerful men from leaving me outside before." His face hardened. Not at her. At the implication. Frost Hollow law does not govern Crown territory. He crossed to a narrow table near the window. Her torn cloak had been folded there beside her boots. Next to them lay the iron clasp from the rogue. Mara stared at it. Ronan noticed. "You remember that?" "Yes." "You called it Vain Forge." "It is." He picked it up. "Tell me why." Mara swung her legs carefully over the edge of the bed. Weakness rolled through her, but she waited until the room steadied. "My father tracked northern trade routes for Frost Hollow. House Vane uses different marks depending on where the iron is going. Mine guards carry the 3-bar heel. Caravan equipment gets a crowned V." Ronan turned the clasp between 2 fingers. "And rogues? They get nothing." His eyes lifted. "You are certain?" "Yes. That is not the same as proof that House Vane armed them." Mara's jaw tightened. "I didn't say they armed them. You implied it. I said the clasp shouldn't have been there." Ronan placed it on the table. "A rogue could have taken it from a corpse." The boot tracks beside him were Vane mine boots. Stolen boats. They were walking together, or happened to cross the same ravine. Mara stared at him. "You saw the tracks." "I did." "And you still think it means nothing?" "I think it means something." His voice remained calm. "I do not yet know what." Anger rose faster than she expected. Maybe because Gavin had refused to listen. Maybe because she was tired of men deciding that what she saw mattered only after they approved it. There was an arrowhead, too. Ronan's attention sharpened. At Frost Hollow, Mara told him about the broken iron piece recovered from the caravan attack, the missing forge mark, the filing along the base. "I tried to show Gavin before he rejected me." "You still have it?" "No. It fell in the hall." "Then we cannot examine it." Her laugh was short and bitter. "Convenient. For whom?" "For everyone who told me I was imagining things." Ronan's expression cooled. "I did not say you imagined anything. You just found 6 different ways to say I might be wrong. I found 6 ways the evidence might have another explanation." Mara pushed herself to her feet. The movement made the floor sway. But she refused to sit again. "You think because I was rejected that I'm looking for someone to blame?" "No." "You think I want revenge against House Vane because Gavin chose Lenora?" "No." "Then what do you think?" Ronan held her gaze. "I think pain makes certainty seductive." The word struck hard. He continued before she could answer. "And I think kings who mistake certainty for evidence start wars." Silence settled between them. Mara hated that part of her, understood him. That made it worse. "You don't have to start a war," she said. "You could look." "I am looking." "You're standing in a bedroom." One corner of Ronan's mouth almost moved. "Almost. The clasp has already gone to my smith's. My trackers are returning to the ravine, and 3 guards left before sunrise to inspect the road south." Mara blinked. He had done all of that without telling her. Ronan stepped closer. "But until they return, I will not accuse an alpha house, because one wounded woman survived a rogue attack. There it was. Not cruelty. Procedure." Mara sat back down, more because her legs demanded it than because she wanted to. "What happens to me now?" "You remain here. As a prisoner?" His brows drew together. "As a protected guest. Those can look similar from inside a locked room. The door is not locked." Mara looked toward it. Ronan followed her gaze. "Crown law grants sanctuary to any packless wolf who reaches royal territory without committing a crown offense. Pregnancy strengthens that protection." "So Gavin cannot take me back?" No. Even if he claims the child, no. The answer came instantly this time. Some tension left her chest. Ronan noticed. He has no authority over you here. Mara looked down at her hands. He used to. No, Ronan said. He convinced you that he did. She looked up. Their eyes met. Something moved inside Mara's mind. Herr Wolf, weak, injured, but awake. For the first time since the rejection, she lifted her head, and then, impossibly, settled, not in submission. In quiet, Ronan went very still. His own eyes darkened toward red. Neither spoke for several seconds. Mara felt a pull she did not trust. Old, warm, dangerous precisely because it did not feel dangerous. Ronan stepped back first. The distance was deliberate. Mara noticed that too. What was that? I don't know. He lied. Badly. But he did not come closer. That mattered. A knock interrupted them. A guard entered carrying a shallow wooden box. Your Majesty. The smith's preliminary report. Ronan opened it. Inside lay the vein clasp and 3 small fragments of blackened iron. The guard continued. The clasp is genuine. Same alloy used at Vane's Western mine within the last 2 years. Mara's pulse quickened. Ronan did not celebrate. Anything else? The tracker team has not returned. Mara looked toward the window. What road did you send them to? The northern trade route. Which section? Between Frost Hollow and Grafen Pass. She stood again. This time Ronan did not tell her to sit. I need your maps. He studied her. Why? Because the attacks weren't random. You cannot know that. I know where Frost Hollow lost 3 caravans. I know where my father taught me the old winter routes. And if the rogue in that ravine came from the same network. She crossed to the table and placed 1 finger beside the iron clasp. Then someone has been using the gaps between those routes. Ronan said nothing. Mara felt something she had not felt since Gavin's rejection. Purpose, not hope. Better than hope. Something she could act on. Give me the Crown Caravan records, she said. Not rumors. Dates. Routes. Lost shipments. Every attack north of Frost Hollow for the last 6 months. Ronan's eyes narrowed. You believe you can find a pattern. I believe tracks tell the truth when people don't. The room remained silent. Then, Ronan turned to the guard. Take her to the Western Archive. Mara exhaled. The guard bowed. Ronan looked back at her. 1 condition. She waited. You do not leave the Citadel without my authorization. Mara stiffened. His expression did not change. Not because I own your choices. Because someone may already know you survived. That stopped her. Ronan picked up the vein clasp. If you are right, Mara Ellery, the rogue in that forest was not hunting by accident. He closed his hand around the iron, and neither were the men walking beside it. The Western Archive smelled of dust, old leather, and cold stone. Mara preferred it to perfume. By noon, 3 long tables had disappeared beneath maps, caravan manifests, toll records, and reports from every northern road that crossed Crown territory. Ronan had given her what she asked for, but not privacy. 2 royal clerks worked beside her, recording every document she touched, while a guard remained stationed at the door. Mara did not object. If she found something important, she wanted witnesses. She began with Frost Hollow. 3 caravans attacked in 5 months, 1 in early autumn, 1 12 days later, the last only 6 nights before the winter solstice feast. Officially, each attack had been blamed on wandering rogues. Mara spread a trade map across the table and marked the locations with small pieces of charcoal. Then she requested Vane shipment records. The first clerk hesitated. Those are private contracts. Not anymore, Ronan said from the doorway. Mara had not heard him enter. He crossed the archive and placed a sealed packet on the table. House Vane supplied iron to 6 northern packs this year. These are the Crown copies. Mara broke the seal. The numbers seemed ordinary at first. Then they did not. She read the dates again. Every time a Frost Hollow caravan was attacked, House Vane increased the price of replacement iron within days. The first increase was modest. The second almost doubled. After the third attack, Victor Vane offered a military alliance instead of another standard contract. Mara leaned closer. What? Ronan came beside her. She pointed to the dates. Look at the timing. His gaze moved across the page. Prices rise during scarcity. Yes, that proves nothing. I know. The answer surprised him. Mara pulled another map closer. But scarcity usually follows an attack. Here, Vane wagons changed their routes before the attacks happened. Ronan's attention sharpened. She showed him the manifests. 3 shipments scheduled to pass near Frost Hollow had been redirected through Grafen Pass 48 hours before Frost Hollow caravans were hit. Why? Ronan asked. That is what I want to know. The answer came from the forge. By late afternoon, Mara stood beneath the vaulted stone roof of Blackspire's royal smithy, while sparks jumped from 3 separate furnaces. Master Smith Halden, a massive man with burns across both forearms, laid 2 iron bars on an anvil. One came from Crown Storage, he said. Purchased from Vane 18 months ago. He tapped the second. This came from their latest northern shipment. They look identical, Mara said. They were meant to. Halden heated both. When the metal glowed, he worked each into a narrow blade. The first rang cleanly beneath the hammer. The second gave a duller note. Halden's expression darkened. Too much slag. How much? Ronan asked. Enough that I wouldn't issue it to a kitchen boy. He quenched both blades. Then he handed them to a royal guard. Strike. The guard brought the first sword down against an iron post. Clang. A nick appeared along the edge. Nothing more. The second blade struck. It snapped near the middle. The broken half spun across the floor. No one spoke. Mara stared at it. Frost Hollow warriors had been complaining about weapons failing for months. Gavin had believed the failure proved how desperately they needed Vane. Instead, it might prove the opposite. Ronan crouched beside the broken blade. Could this happen accidentally? Halden scratched his beard. One bad bar? Yes. One shipment? Carelessness. Several? The smith looked up. Then someone is either incompetent or cheating. Mara watched Ronan. For the first time, he looked troubled, rather than merely cautious. Send inspectors to every Crown storehouse carrying recent Vane iron, he ordered. Quietly. Mara frowned. Quietly? Ronan stood. If House Vane is involved, I want them unaware of what we know, and if someone gets another shipment before your inspectors finish. They won't. You cannot know that. His eyes hardened. I can stop Crown purchases immediately. Frost Hollow isn't Crown. Controlled. No. And Gavin is still buying from them. Ronan's jaw tightened. So are 4 other packs. Then van them. If I accuse House Vane publicly and we are wrong, every northern trade contract fractures by morning. We just watched their sword break. We watched one sword break. Mara stepped closer. How many dead warriors do you need before the number becomes evidence? The smithy went silent. Ronan's face became unreadable. Mara knew immediately she had crossed a line. She did not regret it. Finally, Ronan said, I need more. So do I. That night, the royal trackers returned. One had blood dried across his sleeve. The other carried a bundle wrapped in torn canvas. They had followed the old northern route Mara identified and found a hidden camp 2 miles from the road. Not a rogue den, a supply camp. Mara insisted on seeing it. Ronan refused. You are still recovering. I know the road. My trackers know the road now. They don't know my father's trail marks. You are pregnant. That is not a prison sentence. No, it is a fact. And so is this. Whoever built that camp may have been using Frost Hollow routes my father mapped. If there is something there, I may recognize it. Ronan stared at her, long enough for irritation, to turn into something more complicated. 4 guards. Tfo. Four. 3. His mouth tightened. 4. Mara folded her arms. Fine. They left. At dawn, Ronan came with them. The hidden camp lay beneath a rock shelf, almost invisible from the road. Whoever had built it understood the terrain. Snow had been brushed across old fire pits. Branches concealed supply crates. Pieces of raw meat hung from hooks where wolves could reach them. Not feed for men, feed for rogues. Mara crouched near the edge of the camp. Several boot marks crossed the frozen earth. 3-bar heels. Vain mine guards. Again, a royal tracker uncovered an iron collar half buried beneath leaves. Mara turned it over. The same crowned V marked the clasp. Then she saw something carved into the post beside it. 3 shortcuts. 1 long. Her breath caught. My father. Ronan looked at her. What? He marked roads this way. Mara ran her fingers over the cuts. 3 short means unsafe passage. 1 long means someone altered the trail. You think he found this camp? I think he knew something was wrong. She searched the ground more urgently. Behind the post, beneath a flat stone, she found a strip of weathered leather. Her father's handwriting covered one side. Only 4 words remained readable. Vein wagons. North route. Wrong. Mara's throat closed. He had known, maybe not everything, but enough to look. A shout came from the far side of camp. Fire. Flame erupted inside one of the canvas shelters. Too fast, too hot. Oil. Someone had left a trap. A second shelter caught, then a third. Out! Ronan shouted. Guards pulled back as fire raced across the concealed camp. Mara saw a wooden chest near the center begin to burn. A metal seal press lay inside. If the camp had produced forged documents, that press might be the only physical link. She ran toward it. Ronan caught her around the waist. No, that chest is burning. The seal. Another section of roof collapsed. Sparks exploded across the clearing. Mara twisted against him. We need it. Ronan released her only to tear off his cloak and wrap it around one arm. He charged through the smoke. For a terrible second, Mara saw nothing. Then Ronan emerged, carrying the half-burning chest. He threw it into the snow. The guards smothered the flames. Inside, most of the papers had turned to ash, but the metal press survived. Holden's apprentice wiped soot from its face. A crowned V, and beneath it, a second removable plate. Frost Hollow's wolf. Mara felt sick. They could forge both sides of a contract. Ronan said nothing. They returned to Blackspire before sunset. By then, another message was waiting. A Frost Hollow caravan had been attacked that morning. 7 men injured, 1 dead. The report had been sent before Ronan's inspectors reached the border packs. He read it twice. Mara watched his expression change. I told you to warn them. I know. You were afraid of destabilizing trade. I know. A man is dead. Ronan looked at her. There was no defense in his face now. Only recognition. His caution had been reasonable, and still, someone had paid for it. He turned to the captain of his guard. Seal every vein shipment in Crown territory. Send riders to every northern pack. No one uses another blade until it is tested. The captain bowed and left. Mara thought that was the end of it. Then Ronan looked toward the archive corridor and locked the caravan records. She stared at him. What? Until we know who inside Blackspire can be trusted. You're sealing the records? I'm protecting them. You're also stopping me from using them. For tonight. Ronan. This camp was destroyed within hours of my trackers finding it. Someone is communicating with House Vane. Mara understood his reasoning. She hated it anyway. You cannot solve a conspiracy by locking away the people trying to expose it. I am locking away paper. You always call it something smaller when you take control. The words landed. Ronan went still. Mara walked past him. At the archive doors, 2 royal guards were already turning the keys. She looked back once. Gavin never listened because he thought he knew what would save everyone. Ronan's expression changed. Mara continued quietly. Be careful you don't become the same kind of man. For better reasons. She left him standing alone in the corridor. The next morning, Ronan came to her chamber carrying a ledger. He placed it on the table without speaking. Mara opened it. Her father's name appeared halfway down the page. Beside it were 6 payments from an illegal vein intermediary. The final entry was dated 3 weeks before his death. Mara stopped breathing. Ronan's voice was low. This was recovered from the burned camp. She looked up. What are you saying? I'm saying someone wants us to believe your father was paid to help them. Mara stared at the ink. For the first time since entering Blackspire, she wanted the evidence to be lying. Mara read the ledger until the ink blurred. Her father's name appeared 6 times. 6 payments. 6 dates. 6 neat entries suggesting that Elias Ellery, the man who had taught her never to ignore a broken track, had sold Frost Hollow's roads to smugglers. For one terrible moment, she believed it. Not because the evidence was convincing, because grief made cruelty easy to accept. Ronan stood across the table without speaking. You should leave, Mara said. I can. Then do. He did. That mattered. Mara sat alone until anger replaced shock. Then she opened the ledger again. This time, she stopped reading her father's name. She examined everything around it. The paper, the stitching, the wax seals pressed into the inner binding. Her father had taught her that liars loved important details and neglected small ones. The first mistake was the date. 1 payment had supposedly been recorded in midsummer. Mara touched the dark red wax beside it. Winter Pineresin. She knew the smell. Vain scribes had begun mixing pine resin into their sealing wax only after a storehouse fire destroyed their old supply late that autumn. This ledger could not have existed when the entry claimed it had. Mara stood so quickly, the chair scraped across the floor. Guard. The door opened. Bring the king. Ronan returned minutes later. Mara pushed the ledger toward him. It's forged. His expression sharpened. Show me. She did. Within an hour, the royal archivist confirmed the wax composition. By evening, another discrepancy appeared. 1 shipment number belonged to a caravan that had never traveled north. By midnight, a clerk found 2 contracts bearing identical imperfections in the vein seal, duplicate stamps. The burned camp had not contained proof that Elias Ellery was corrupt. It had contained proof that someone wanted him remembered that way. Mara stood in the archive, while the final verification was read aloud. Her hands did not shake. My father found their root, she said quietly. So they buried his warning beneath a lie. Ronan dismissed the clerks. When they were alone, he said, I owe you an apology. Mara looked at him. For believing the ledger? For putting it in front of you like a political problem before asking what seeing his name there would do to you. She had not expected that. Ronan continued, I was taught that evidence must come before sympathy. It should. Yes. He paused. But sympathy does not corrupt evidence. Sometimes it only reminds us who pays while we investigate. Mara looked down at the ledger. You were right not to trust me blindly. And you were right that caution can become another way of doing nothing. Silence settled between them. Then Ronan placed a second document on the table, a royal summons. The Northern Conclave begins in 4 days. Mara read the names. Victor Vane, Lenore Van, Gavin Rourke. Her chest tightened. Gavin is coming here? Yes. Ronan watched her carefully. If you want him kept away from you, say so. Mara's first instinct was yes. Then she remembered the arrowhead striking Frost Hollow's stone floor, while Gavin refused to look at it. No. Ronan said nothing. I want him in the room. Why? because he should see what he chose not to see. Something shifted in Ronan's expression. Approval, perhaps, or something warmer. Mara looked away first. Her inner wolf stirred again. She had felt the strange quiet around Ronan before, but now it came with something else. A pull beneath the ribs, steady and unsettling. Ronan seemed to feel it too. His eyes darkened. Mara. She looked back. What is happening between us? He could have lied. This time he did not. My wolf recognized something in you the night I found you. Amate? I don't know. You looked like you knew. I know what I suspect. Her stomach tightened. She had already survived one bond that had been treated like ownership. Ronan seemed to read the fear before she spoke. I will not claim you. Mara went still. Even if the bond is real, especially then. He stepped back, giving her space, without making a performance of it. You have had enough people deciding what your life means before you speak. For the first time, Mara did not know what to say. Ronan turned toward the door. At the conclave, Victor Vane will attack your credibility. Gavin may try to claim the child. Lenora will defend the alliance. And you? I will rule on what can be proven. Mara almost smiled. Still, the king of evidence. Unfortunately, he opened the door, then stopped. But this time, I intend to make sure you are heard before I decide. After he left, Mara looked again at the summons. Gavin Rourke. The name no longer felt like a wound. It felt like unfinished business. 4 days from now, the man who had cast her into the snow would walk into the Alpha King's hall expecting to save what remained of his pack. Mara intended to show him exactly who had destroyed it. The great hall of Blackspire had been built to make powerful men remember they were not kings. Black stone pillars rose into shadow. Winter banners hung motionless above the gathered alphas, and at the far end of the hall, Ronan Ashbourne sat beneath the carved crest of the crown. Mara waited behind the side doors. She heard Gavin before she saw him. Frost Hollow requests emergency access to crown, iron, and military protection through spring. His voice sounded different, tired. Ronan answered from the throne. And why does Frost Hollow need either? Rogue attacks have destroyed our supply lines. House Vane's mines cannot meet demand quickly enough. Victor Vane stood beside him. That is an unfair description. My house has sacrificed considerable resources to support Frost Hollow. Mara closed her eyes briefly. 4 months ago, Gavin would have believed him. Maybe he still did. Ronan's next question cut through the hall. And what did House Vane receive in return? Silence. Then Gavin said, an alliance. And your Luna? Yes. The doors opened. Mara stepped into the hall. Gavin stopped breathing. She wore no crown and no jewels beyond the simple silver clasp of Crown Sanctuary at her shoulder. Her dark blue gown showed the beginning curve of her pregnancy, clearly enough that no one could misunderstand it. Lenora's face went pale. Victor Vane's did not change. Gavin took 1 step forward. Mara? She continued walking until she stood below Ronan's dais. You're alive. That seems to disappoint several people. A murmur moved through the court. Gavin looked at her stomach. Then everything else disappeared from his expression. The child. Mara's body tightened. That child is mine. No, she said. Gavin stared. My blood is in that child. Your ownership is not. His eyes flashed. She was my mate, he told Ronan. She carries the Frost Hollow line. I demand her return. Ronan did not answer. He looked at Mara. The choice was deliberate. Mara met Gavin's eyes. No. 1 word. Nothing in the hall moved. Victor Vane stepped forward. Your Majesty, before this woman is allowed to influence Crown policy, perhaps the court should know her family's history. A ledger was carried forward. Mara almost smiled. Victor opened it. Elias Ellery accepted payments from smugglers using vein routes. His daughter now accuses the same house that her father secretly profited from. Ronan turned to Mara. Your answer? She took the ledger. The wax binding. Contains winter pine resin. Victor's expression shifted. This entry claims to have been sealed in midsummer. House Vane did not begin using that resin until after its autumn storehouse fire. The royal archivist stepped forward. Confirmed. Another clerk presented 2 documents. Identical seal defects were found on contracts recovered from the rogue supply camp. Mara looked directly at Victor. My father was not your smuggler. He found your road. The room changed. Victor finally looked concerned. Ronan raised one hand. Bring the blades. 2 swords were carried into the center of the hall. Master Smith Holden followed. One blade was forged from archived vein. Iron purchased 18 months ago. The other from a recent northern shipment. He handed both to a royal guard. The first sword struck an iron post. It held. The second came down. Metal snapped. The broken half clattered across the floor at Gavin's feet. Gavin stared at it. Mara watched understanding begin to form. Halder spoke. The recent shipment contains excessive slag, enough to cause battlefield failure. That proves poor iron, Victor said sharply. Not conspiracy. You're right, Mara said. 3 small iron clasps were placed beside the broken sword. All bore the crowned V. These were taken from rogues captured or killed near 3 separate caravan attacks. Holden turned each over. Same mold series, used by Vane Western mine guards. Then came the root sheets. Mara spread them across a table. Every attacked Frost Hollow caravan was redirected shortly before contact. Every redirection passed through a clerk controlled by House Vane. Gavin stepped closer. His face had lost all color. No. Mara pointed to the dates. Your iron shortages were not accidents. No. The attacks made you desperate. Gavin looked toward Victor. You told me the roads were collapsing. Victor said nothing. You told me Frost Hollow would die without your mines. Still nothing. Mara finished quietly. And while your warriors were buying more iron, House Vane was selling you weaker metal. Gavin looked at Lenora. Did you know? Her silence lasted too long. Not about the deaths, she said finally. That was enough. Gavin staggered back as if struck. Everything he had chosen suddenly stood in front of him. The marriage, the rejection, Mara in the snow, the child he had abandoned. I did it for the pack, he whispered. Mara looked at him for a long moment. No. Her voice was calm now. You did it because you decided I was the easiest thing to sacrifice. Gavin had no answer. Ronan rose from the throne. The entire hall lowered its head. Victor Vane will be detained pending Crown trial. All Vane trade authority is suspended. Lenora Vane will remain under investigation. Then Ronan looked at Gavin. Your judgment comes next. Gavin looked toward Mara. For the first time since the winter solstice feast, there was no authority left in his face, only fear, and Mara realized she no longer needed to see him destroyed. She only needed the truth to remain standing after he fell. Ronan did not exile Gavin into the snow. That surprised everyone. You used banishment as an execution, the Alpha King said from the dais. The crown will not repeat your crime merely because vengeance would be satisfying. Gavin stood below him, stripped of weapons, title, and command. Frost Hollow will be governed by an interim council until new leadership is chosen. You will be removed from the territory and held under crown authority, pending judgment for unlawful exile and endangerment of a pack member. Gavin looked toward Mara. She felt nothing like the agony she had expected, only distance. I'm sorry, he said. Mara studied the man she had once believed would become her entire future. I believe you regret what it cost you. His face tightened. That isn't the same as regretting what you did. The guards escorted him away. Mara did not watch the doors close. 3 weeks later, the first wagons of tested crown iron entered Frost Hollow. Vane contracts were suspended across the north. Families of warriors injured by defective weapons received compensation, and every surviving blade from the compromised shipments was recalled. Ronan also issued a new law. No rejected mate, pregnant or otherwise, could be declared rogue solely through the authority of the rejecting alpha. Exile now required independent review under Crown law. When Mara read the decree, she understood what made it different from an apology. It would protect people Ronan would never meet. That evening, he found her overlooking the northern road from Blackspire's highest balcony. "You changed the law," she said. "I corrected a weakness. You could have simply punished Gavin. That would have repaired nothing." Mara looked at him. He had learned. So had she. Ronan handed her a sealed document. "What is this?" "An appointment." She broke the seal. "Crown Warden of Roads and Caravans." Mara stared at him. "You're giving me authority over northern routes? I'm giving you the authority your work proved you can carry." A small smile touched her mouth. "And if I disagree with you, I have developed unfortunate experience with that possibility." She laughed. It was the first time laughter had come easily since Frost Hollow. Ronan's expression softened. Then his gaze dropped briefly toward her stomach before returning to her face. "There is one more matter. The bond." "Yes." Her inner wolf stirred quietly. Ronan did not move closer. "I believe what I felt in the forest was real," he said. "But a bond is not permission." Mara waited. "So I will not claim you. I will not name you anything you have not chosen. What will you do?" "For now?" The feared Alpha King looked almost uncertain. "I would like to ask whether I may court you." Mara considered making him suffer longer. Perhaps someday she would. "You may start with dinner." Ronan smiled. Below them, crown wagons rolled north beneath fresh banners, carrying strong iron toward the pack that had nearly destroyed itself, chasing false salvation. Mara placed one hand over her stomach. The child moved. Ronan noticed but did not reach for her. Mara took his hand herself and placed it gently against the movement. His breath caught. Months ago, Mara had believed being chosen would prove her worth. Now she understood something better. She had survived being discarded. She had uncovered the truth. She had earned authority in her own name. And this time, when a powerful man stood beside her, it was because she had chosen where he was allowed to stand. Mara returned to Frost Hollow 6 weeks later, not as Gavin Rourke's rejected mate, but as Crown Warden of Roads and Caravans. No feast greeted her. No music played. That suited her. She rode through the gates beside a small royal escort, Ronan remaining at Blackspire by her own request. This was something she needed to do without a king standing behind her. The same gods who had dragged her into the snow now lowered their eyes. Mara did not punish them. She had not come for obedience. She had come for answers. The interim council waited inside the great hall. The high table where Gavin had rejected her was gone, removed while the pack reorganized its leadership. Mara placed 3 sealed orders on the council table. Every remaining vain weapon would be destroyed. Every northern route would be inspected. Families who had lost hunters or warriors during the manufactured crisis would receive crown compensation. One elder stared at her silver warden clasp. "We failed you." Mara looked toward the stone floor where her broken arrowhead had once fallen. "You failed yourselves when you watched an alpha silence the person questioning him." No one answered. Outside, workers unloaded tested iron. Mara crossed the courtyard alone. Near the gate, she stopped at the exact patch of frozen earth where the gods had thrown her months earlier. Spring had begun breaking through the snow. She rested a hand over the child moving beneath her cloak. For so long, this place had existed in her memory as the moment her life ended. Now, she understood it differently. Frost Hollow had not been the end. It had been the place where everyone else decided who she was. Mara turned toward the northern road. This time, she left through the gates because she chose to. Gavin requested to see her once. Mara almost refused. Then she realized refusal born from fear would still give him more power than he deserved. She found him inside a crown-holding house 2 days south of Blackspire. There were no chains on his wrists, but the absence of rank had changed him more effectively than iron ever could. He stood when she entered. His eyes dropped instinctively toward her stomach. Mara noticed. "Don't." Gavin looked back at her face. "I wasn't going to claim anything." That would be a first. Pain crossed his expression. He accepted it. "I heard what you've done for Frost Hollow. The council is doing most of it. They listened to you. They listened too late." Gavin lowered his eyes. For several moments, neither spoke. Then he said, "If I had looked at the arrowhead, Mara already knew the sentence that would follow. If I had given you those 3 days, you didn't." "I know." He swallowed. "I thought choosing you meant risking everyone, and you never considered that choosing me might have meant listening to me." That was the truth he had no defense against. Gavin stepped closer, then stopped himself. "I did love you." Mara believed him. That was what made everything harder and simpler. "I know." His face broke slightly. "Wasn't that enough?" "No." Mara's answer was gentle. "Love without respect becomes another kind of hunger." She turned toward the door. "Mara." She paused. "I hope he deserves you." She looked back. "That's not the question anymore." Gavin frowned. Mara rested one hand against the door. "The question is whether I choose him." Then she left Gavin with the consequence he would carry longer than any sentence the crown could impose. He had not lost Mara, because Ronan Ashbourne was stronger. He had lost her, because, when she had asked to be heard, he had chosen not to listen. Their daughter was born during the first storm of the following winter, not in a throne room, not beneath prophecy, not surrounded by priests waiting to declare her some miraculous heir. She arrived, screaming inside Mara's chambers at Blackspire, while Ronan stood outside the door because Mara had threatened to throw a water pitcher at him if he paced inside one more time. When the healer finally opened the door, the Alpha King entered more cautiously than Mara had ever seen him enter a battlefield. Mara lay exhausted against the pillows, with a dark-haired infant sleeping against her chest. Ronan stopped. The man who could silence an entire hall simply stared. "She's small," he whispered. "She was born 10 minutes ago." "I expected a warhorse?" Mara smiled tiredly. "Sit down." He obeyed. Months of courtship had changed them slowly. There had been arguments, long dinners. Road inspections Ronan insisted were too dangerous and Mara insisted were her job. There had also been trust. No claiming bite. No command. No assumption that destiny could replace choice. Mara looked down at her daughter. "She needs a name." Ronan reached toward the infant, then paused. Mara noticed. "Even now?" he asked, without speaking. She shifted the child carefully into his arms. The Alpha King looked terrified. Mara almost laughed. "Ronan Ashbourne. Afraid of a baby. She has your expression. She is asleep." "Exactly." Mara laughed then. Outside, Blackspire's bells began ringing. Not for a royal heir, for the safe birth of a child under crown protection, as they rang for every child born within the citadel. Ronan looked at Mara. "Will you marry me?" She raised an eyebrow. "That was poorly timed. I've been waiting 7 months. Then another minute won't kill you." His smile appeared. Mara let him wait. Then she reached across the blankets and took his hand. Yes, not because a goddess had commanded it, not because a bond demanded it, and not because a king had rescued her from the snow. Mara chose him because he had learned to stand beside her without asking her to become smaller. Beyond the windows, winter covered the northern roads again. This time, Mara Ellery was not lost in it. She was the woman who knew exactly where she was going.